Hi friends, Mickey Mankis here and welcome to Out the Back Door. Today I want to share my recipe for salsa with you. The gardens are just booming. It's time to be harvesting, so let's get to it. So a couple of days ago I was very blessed. My sister came over and she went out into the garden and she started picking tomatoes for me because I'm not allowed to bend over yet. So I said, well, while you're in there, please pick the jalapenos and everything. And then grab a few onions. And I had her picking cilantro and it was like, yes, I am going to be doing salsa. Now, I used to work in a deli at a natural foods co-op. So we were trying to decide in the deli, I was getting recipes from all the employees and everything there that they wanted to contribute because we were trying to come up with a really good recipe to share with the public, that they would want to buy. And I kind of looked at a bunch of the different recipes and started pulling from all of them, and I thought, I'm going to do it my own, and this is what I'm going to share with you today. If you do follow me, a lot of times you see I don't measure a whole lot, and this is going to be one of them. So if you're going to make this recipe and you're following along, what I suggest is while you're putting your ingredients in, that you're tasting it to see if it's where you want it. Because yes, it does look like a huge amount of jalapenos, which it is. I'm not using them all there. I'm going to be doing another video with the remainder of them. But some people like it mild, like Mr. Mankis. Some people like it hot, like me. So I am going to add a little bit more to it. So I already washed all my tomatoes and everything. This is an Amish paste type tomato. This is called a health kick. And I decided to try these this year because they were supposed to be a really good, hearty, meaty type tomato that I could be using in the salsa if I want to use it in marinara sauce, anything like that. It doesn't have as much liquid in it, but it's packed full of flavor. It's also packed full of lycopenes. So I thought, well, we're going to give these a try. I've got like 8 plants out there. There's a ton of green tomatoes on there yet, so I know I'm going to be doing a lot of different things with the tomatoes, as they ripen up and everything. So I got these all washed and everything, and I am going to be using the food processor today. There's just too much for me to sit and cut by hand, and I can't stand that long right now. So let me go get the food processor, and we're going to get started. Before I start putting the tomatoes into the food processor, what I'm going to do is I'm just trimming off the very end here where the stem was connected. I'm just going to throw those into a bowl. Now, I don't care what you do with them. You can feed them to the chickens. You can throw them in the compost. Do whatever you want with them, but I'm not going to be using them today. Another thing I'd like to get ready for this is a mesh sieve. I've also got a pot here that I am going to be placing the sieve over. And what I'm going to be using this for is because once I get these processed, and I'm not going to make a liquid out of it, but I want it super chunky, I'm going to dump them into here because the excess liquid is going to be draining below. I'm trying to eliminate as much liquid as possible because I don't want a super runny salsa once I get it canned and then I open it up. It's okay because you can stir it up and mix that liquid back that may separate some, but I'm trying to avoid having too much liquid in the salsa. I don't care for that. So once I get them all chopped up, then I will be putting them in the sieve and I'll let them drain a bit. Actually, what I call the excess liquid that ends up draining down in here is tomato plasma. To me, it's like the plasma that's coming out of the blood supply. Well, I'm just draining more of it out. So there you go. If you want to use that in different soups or whatever as a base, because there is a tomato flavor to it, go ahead and do that. So what I'm just going to do right now, I'll probably quarter these tomato pieces. No big deal. They don't have to be super fine. If I was doing a small batch of salsa, I would do this all by hand. And I would have nice little diced up pieces of tomato. But as long as I've got as much as I have right now, I'm just going to keep chopping these up and throw them into the food processor. I've also got the heat underneath my canner going right now because I am going to water bath can these. I'm using regular mouth pint jars today. I'm also going to be using the original metal flats that came with them because these are brand new cases. I've washed all my jars and everything. I just can't get to my tattlers quite yet. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use the metal flats on them. Also, I may be giving a couple of jars away, and I don't want to have to try to track down my tattler lids. So, all right, I'm gonna keep chopping. I'm gonna get this about halfway full, and then I'll start processing. I don't know if you can see already. See the liquid that's coming out of this? So this is what I do. Once I get these all chopped up and everything, I strain them all. And the liquid in the bottom there still has flavor in it. You don't need to throw it out. Put a little bit of salt and Worcestershire sauce. There we go. In there or whatever, and jazz up. You got a little tomato juice drink there if you want. You can also use it in soups, sauces. I'm just saying, you don't toss it out. Don't toss out the tomato plasma. Okay, so I'm gonna keep chopping these up, and I am going to keep straining them. Give it a little shake. Oh, lots of liquid coming out of the bottom here because I don't want soupy salsa. All right, I had to sit for most of the time while I was cutting these up. It's just, I am on a restriction of how long I can be standing and walking around, and then I also need to be resting. And so it took me a little bit longer than normal to chop these all up, but I want you to see in this picture of the big bowl of tomatoes and all that clear liquid. Well, it's a yellow colored liquid that's coming out of the tomatoes, and it's sitting in the bottom of the bowl. And I went and I took a bulb syringer, you know, like a baster, and I went and I sucked out as much as I can. Now, we also ended up with a very large amount of tomato juice. That's more or less what this is, tomato juice, when I was calling it tomato plasma. Now, the reason I'm trying to take out so much liquid now is because when I do add salt to it, it's going to keep pulling more liquid out of it. One of the next steps I'm going to do is cilantro. And I've already picked this out of the garden and washed it and everything. I would say for this amount of tomatoes, I've got probably maybe about 5 bunches of cilantro if you buy it at the store. And I'm just going to go and put that in the food processor also and whip this up. I'll do 1 bag at a time, but I love the fresh flavor of cilantro in the salsa. Now, somebody had said they use parsley, and it just, to me, it doesn't have the same flavor. It was getting a little bit warm in the kitchen here while I had the canner heating up. Being it was taking so long, I ended up turning it off. The water's still hot and everything, but being I am going to be putting room temperature ingredients into the jars and everything, I don't want a major temperature shock as far as setting the jars into boiling hot water and then shattering my jars. All right, so I'm just going to dump that in there. And like I said, you decide how much of these ingredients you actually want in here. I really, really like cilantro, so I go a little bit heavier on it. Now, being I haven't been able to get out into the gardens much, well, actually just started going out there to see what's going on. I noticed a lot of my cilantro, a lot of things are going to seed. And it's like, I almost cringed, and then I realized, you know what, it was the sacrifice that I had to make in order to have the surgery at this time. I knew that there was a possibility I was going to lose a few things. I was able to pick all the cilantro that I had here. My sister, it was so cute, she had gone out to the garden. I said, well, I need cilantro for, like, you know, a regular size batch. I was just going to make some fresh salsa. So I said, go get me cilantro. And oh my gosh, it was so cute. She comes, she goes, is this enough? And she had, it was like this huge bouquet of cilantro in her arms. I'm like, Okay. And so she started picking some of the cilantro off of there and everything. And I said, how about we're going to hang this to dehydrate? Because I do dehydrate cilantro also. All right, so now I'm going to put some jalapenos in. If you want a milder, you can use less jalapeno, or when you're cutting them up, you may want to use rubber gloves or something, that's fine. But when you're cutting them up, what you can do is de-seed and de-vein them. And that will take a lot of the heat out of them also. You'll still get the flavor of the jalapeno pepper in there. I'm going to just put everything in there. You could use poblanos. Those are a nice, more mellow, I mean, it's a large pepper, but that has a nice flavor, and you could use those in there. Now, if you want something more streaming hot, throw habaneros, ghost peppers, you go for it. Like I said, this is your mixture. You're going to put in the amounts of whatever you want. I'm just showing you what I normally do. I don't follow my recipe. I just dump things in all the time and taste it and go from there. I guess I'm not going to go totally nuts on it. I did notice, though, that my onions and my peppers, for some reason or another in the garden, they grow hot. Except for, okay, my neighbor will say that I grew some really wimpy habaneros. It was habaneros last year. It was like, okay, so I gave him habaneros to make, you know, salsa himself, and he brought me a jar, and I go, I'm not going to eat that, because he used like all of them, and he put the seeds and everything in, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't do that. Okay, so I took a bite of it, and I'm like, and I take another bite. You know, I had chips with it. Took another bite, and I was like, okay, there's some warmth, but where's the heat? I don't know what happened. I grew some major weenie wimp habaneros last year. Okay, the garlic isn't ready in my garden right now, so I found these pre-peeled in these little packages, and each one of these packages is approximately a clove, and I'm going to put 3 of these in here because, like I said, I like garlic. And yes, the garlic is going to give you some heat. Okay, I'm minced that up pretty good because I don't want anybody just biting into a huge chunk of garlic when they're eating the salsa. Okay, now I'm going to put onions in it. I did grab like 3 onions from the garden from this year's, and I was given 1 onion, so I'm going to use that up also. I don't need to chop it up really small as long as I'm going to put it into the food processor. So I'm just going to put them in big chunks like this. Toss them in. Throw them on the floor. Clean up in aisle 5. That's what my husband always likes to say. Okay. We're towards the 3rd week of August or whatever right now, and I still have onions from last season. I didn't plant as many this year, so I don't know if I'm going to be kicking myself next year. And as I said, I grow strong onions. That I minced up pretty well because, like the garlic, I don't want huge bites of it. Alright, get that in there. As you can see, this is making a fairly large amount. Oh, and between the jalapenos, the garlic, and the onion right now, it's kind of warm on the eyes as I'm mixing this up. Next thing I'm going to do, I am adding lime juice. I'm going to put a 1/4 cup of lime juice. Not lemon juice, I'm using lime juice. So, like I said, when the salt starts pulling out liquid and I'm adding the lime juice, that's going to make a difference and get it a little more wet. Now, you want to use canning salt, kosher salt, pickling salt's fine. You want to use anything except for iodized table salt because you don't want the iodine in there. Now, I'm going to be using sea salt. It's fine. And I'm going to start with a 1/4 cup. Like I said, I am going to taste this. I didn't want to like overloaded on salt right away. And besides, I may decide that I want more lime juice in there also. I'm going to let this sit for a few minutes, and then I'm going to taste it to see if I need to put any more salt or any more lime juice in it. All right, let's try this out. I think I put the right amount of jalapenos in there for the heat that I like. It has just, I would call it kind of a medium to hot. Mr. Mankus would say it's blazing hot, but to me it's just kind of a medium hot. It has a really good flavor. It has enough salt, but I want to add just a little more lime juice to it. I'm going to put in about another 1/4 cup. Because I'm missing that. I want that fresh taste in there. Alright, I'm going to start loading up the jars right now. And like I said, I'm doing pint jars. I'm going to leave a 1/2 inch headspace. And once I get them into the canner, I'm going to water bath process them for 15 minutes. But being everything is on the cool side, it's going to take a little bit before it comes up to a boil. And I got too much in that jar. Okay, have to take some out. Make sure when you are water bath processing, you don't start your time until your water with your jars in it is actually boiled. All right, while I'm filling my jars, I keep stirring it up, because otherwise the liquid is going to start separating, and I want to make sure that I have an equal amount of liquid in each jar and that I'm not, you know, going to have a soupy one in there. But anyway, I thought it was kind of cute. Mr. Mankus came home from work and he looks at this big old vat of salsa. He's like, "Ooh, look at all that salsa, yum." And he goes, "Do I get to sample?" And I went, "Well, it's a little on the warm side for you, but you're welcome to." So he's like, "Okay." So I went and I got him like a little custard dish and scooped some up for him, and he was eating it, and he wasn't saying anything. And I thought, well, it must not be that warm if he's not saying anything. So I said, "So is it hot?" He goes, "My mouse, he's on fire." And I'm like, okay, it was a little warm, but he kept eating it, you know, scarfing it down with his tortilla chips or whatever, so guess it couldn't have been too bad. He said, "Well, you're going to save some that's fresh, aren't you?" Because he actually wanted more. Maybe I will convert him. So I did make sure I debubbled all my jars and everything. You know, I have my little handy dandy chopstick here, you know, and went down debubbling, and you got to make sure you do that. Then also, I used a damp paper cloth, paper towel, and wipe around the rims here and everything. You want to make sure everything's good and clean. And yes, I'm using the metal flats. Put that on. All right, fingertip tight, that's it. I can fit approximately about 17 of the regular mouth jars in there, and I think that'll be perfect because it'll give us a nice amount of fresh salsa that we can eat later on. So I'm going to keep filling these up and get them into the canner. I'm going to bring this up to a boil, and once it does come to a boil, as I mentioned, you need to bring it to a boil, then I will time it for 15 minutes. And once that's done, I'll start taking jars out. One thing I forgot to mention, a lot of people think that you actually have to cook your salsa down before putting it in your jar and then canning it. That's not true. Bal may recommend that and everything. I believe what it is because it all cooks down, it's not going to separate as much. But I had you go through a different process about removing a lot of that liquid ahead of time. So it is okay to raw pack it and then hot water bath process it. Don't let anybody tell you differently. For real. So anyway, all right, let's get these in there. I'm glad you were able to join me today, and if you're willing to give this a try, tell me what you think about it, even if you are just eating it fresh and you don't can it up. I really do like this recipe. I've been using it for probably 12, 13 years now. So if you did enjoy this video, please give me a thumbs up and share. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Please consider subscribing. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. So until next time, you have a wonderful day. God bless. Oh, here's an idea. Put the blade in.